I always wondered if I was just a part of my mother's past that she wanted to forget. I never truly felt warmth from her. When I was little, her hugs were always rushed, her compliments rare, and her eyes looked at me as if I were a burden rather than her child. I don't remember exactly when I realized it. Maybe the night I accidentally overheard my mother talking to Richard, her new husband. She looks too much like John, she watches me the way he used to. I hate it. I was only 6 years old when I heard those words. And I understood, even though no one ever said it out loud, that I was a part of her life she wanted to bury. My mother Diane married my father John right after high school. He was a dreamer, a hard worker, but he had nothing except his love for her. They lived in a small apartment, not luxurious but cozy, and then I was born. But love didn't pay the bills, and my mother was never good at enduring hardship. I wasn't even old enough for preschool when she met Richard. A successful businessman with expensive cars and a confident smile that could buy the world. Not long after, she divorced my father. I still remember the day she packed up our things and pulled me away from the tiny apartment I had grown up in. I cried, clinging to her hand, asking where Daddy would go. But she didn't answer. She just dragged me along, leaving behind the family photos and the man who had once meant everything to me. I don't know how long my father stood there watching us leave, but when I turned back, he was still there. A lone figure in an empty home. My mother took me into a completely different world. Richard's house was nothing like any place I had ever lived. High ceilings, massive paintings lining the hallways, spotless furniture that gleamed under the light. But no matter how grand it was never my home. Richard wasn't cruel or cold, but he didn't care about me either. He didn't hate me. He simply didn't see me. When he brought gifts home, they were never for me. When he threw parties, I was just the forgotten child in the corner. And my mother, she changed. If she once held me when I fell, now she only sighed in frustration. If she once smiled at me, now, whenever she looked at me, there was only one thing in her eyes. Then Lily was born. From the moment my mother announced her pregnancy, everything in the house revolved around the baby. Richard smiled more, my mother seemed happier. They talked about Lily as if she were the miracle they had always wished for. And when she was born, I realized something I had probably known all along. I was never what they wanted. Lily was everything my mother had ever dreamed of, beautiful, perfect, adored. As a baby, she was held, cherished, pampered in ways I had never been. If I was a memory my mother wanted to erase, Lily was the future she proudly displayed to the world. And I was just an outsider in my own home. I can't remember the last time I felt love from my mother. Maybe it was when I was too young to understand that she had never truly wanted me. After Lily was born, everything changed, and I was pushed to the side like an unwanted piece in my mother's perfect family picture. I never wished for her to love me as much as Lily. I only wished she would see me as a normal daughter, not a shadow of a past she longed to forget. But that never happened. Lily grew up in a world completely different from mine. She was cherished, shown off to all of my mother's friends, the prettiest clothes, extravagant birthday parties, endless praise. And me? I was the child on the sidelines, wearing last year's worn-out clothes, quietly celebrating my birthday by blowing out a candle on the cupcake my father sent. With each passing day, I felt more like a stranger in my own home. I could never do anything right in my mother's eyes. If I helped her clean, she would scoff and say I was only making a mess. If I brought home good grades, she would glance at my report card and nod dismissively. Lily will be just as smart when she's older. She always had a way of making me feel like I wasn't enough. Once, when I was about 9, my mother took Lily shopping for a party. I wanted to go too, just to spend some time with her. But when I asked, she looked at me as if I had said something ridiculous. "Sophia, who do you think will watch the house if all 3 of us leave?" "But I want a new dress too," I mumbled, looking down at my worn-out shoes. She sighed. "Lily needs a beautiful dress. Because she'll be in front of everyone. And you? No one pays attention to you. That sentence stayed with me for years. But the worst part wasn't her coldness. It was the moment I realized she didn't just want to forget her past with my father. She wanted to erase me from her life entirely. When I was 12, I had already learned how to stay quiet around my mother, but there was one time I couldn't hold back. It was a sweltering summer afternoon. I came home from school and saw her sitting on the couch, cradling Lily, gently stroking her hair while chatting on the phone with a friend. She spoke about Lily with unfiltered pride. "She's truly an angel. I never thought I could love a child this much." I froze. I didn't know why it hurt so much to hear those words, but then, as if on instinct, I spoke. "What about me?" She flinched, looking at me with irritation. "What? Have you ever loved me?" I asked, my voice trembling, unable to hide the pain. She put Lily down, stood up, and walked toward me. "What are you trying to pull now, Sophia?" Her voice was sharp. I hadn't planned to say more, but when I looked into her eyes, the words slipped out. "Dad loves me. Even though he wasn't rich, even though he couldn't give me what you give Lily, at least I know he truly loves me." I didn't have time to react. Her hand struck my face in an instant. Slap. My cheek burned. I blinked, the sting spreading through my head. "Don't ever mention John in front of me again," she hissed, her face twisted with anger. "He was a failure, and if you're just like him, you'll never amount to anything either." I bit my lip, swallowing my tears. She didn't just hate my father, she hated me. Because I was a part of him. That night I lay in bed, pressing my face into my pillow so no one could hear me cry. In the dark I whispered to myself, "I won't cry in front of her again. I won't give her the satisfaction of hurting me anymore." And from that day forward I kept my promise. I learned not to expect anything from her. But deep down, I knew that one day I would leave this house. I didn't know how, but I would find a way out. Because I had come to understand one thing. If I stayed, I would forever be just a shadow. I used to believe that no matter how cold my mother was toward me, she would never abandon me. I was wrong. The announcement came on an evening just like any other. Dinner was silent, filled only with the clinking of silverware against porcelain plates, and Lily's cheerful chatter about school. I sat there, trying to shrink into the background, expecting nothing. But then, my mother set her fork down and looked at me with an unreadable expression. "Sophia, Richard and I have talked. We think it's time for you to move in with your father." I looked up, my heart pounding. "Move out? Why?" She sighed, as if I was making things difficult for her. "You're getting older, Sophia. This house isn't big enough for all of us anymore. Your father can take better care of you." "But I'm still in school here, my friends are here," I protested, my voice shaking. She crossed her arms. "You'll adjust. It's not like you have that many friends to miss, do you?" Her words cut through me like a knife. I turned to Richard, hoping he would say something, but he simply kept eating, as if this conversation had nothing to do with him. Lily glanced at me with innocent eyes, her lips curling into a smile. "It'll be better for all of us, sis. You'll have your own space. And so will I." My own space. I let out a bitter laugh. They were kicking me out. I placed my fork down, my hands gripping the edge of the table so tightly my knuckles turned white. "Is this because of Lily? Because she needs more space? Or is it because you never wanted me here to begin with?" My mother exhaled sharply, as if she were too exhausted to continue the conversation. "Don't make this dramatic. Sophia, the decision has already been made." I had nothing left to say. I packed my things in silence. No one helped me. Lily skipped around the house as if nothing was happening, and my mother and Richard busied themselves with more important things. Like setting up Lily's new room. There were no emotional goodbyes. Richard only nodded when I pulled my suitcase toward the door. My mother stood with her arms crossed, watching me as if expecting gratitude. I didn't give it to her. Lily was the only one who seemed cheerful. She gave me a quick hug and grinned. "Stay in touch, okay? Tell me if anything fun happens. I didn't respond. I stepped out of that house with an old suitcase and a shattered heart. My father picked me up at the bus station with a warm smile and a gentle hug. Welcome home, sweetheart, let's go. His home wasn't big, a small apartment, simply furnished but clean and cozy. It didn't have grand staircases or glittering chandeliers like Richard's house. But the moment I stepped inside, I felt relief, as if I had finally escaped a suffocating cage. Dad helped me settle into my new room. A small but warm space with a window overlooking the alley behind the building. It wasn't a mansion, but at least it was mine. That night, I sat on my bed, staring at the unopened boxes, feeling empty. I was just thrown out of my own home. The thought kept circling in my mind, tightening around my chest. Dad knocked on the door, holding a mug of hot cocoa. He sat beside me, his eyes filled with concern. Sophia, I know this is hard, but you are not a burden. I'm really happy to have you here. I wrapped my hands around the mug, warmth seeping into my fingers. I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. I can't promise everything will be easy, but you don't have to prove anything to me. You don't have to compete for love here. His words made my eyes sting. I turned away, not wanting him to see me fighting back tears. I no longer had a family in the way my mother had defined it. But maybe, here with my dad, I had a chance to build a life where I wasn't just a shadow in my own home. The first few days living with my dad, I felt lost in a way I had never experienced before. Not because he didn't love me, but because I didn't know where I belonged anymore. I had spent so long surrounded by people who treated me as an outsider. But now, with no one dismissing me as a burden, I felt empty. I didn't know who I was if I wasn't the unwanted child. Or Lily's shadow. Dad did everything he could to make me feel comfortable. He cooked my favorite meals, asked about school, let me decorate my room however I wanted. But the truth was, I didn't know where to start. The high school I transferred to was completely different from my old one. There were no spoiled kids flaunting designer clothes or throwing extravagant parties, but that didn't make things any easier. I was still the new girl, an invisible yet heavy label. On my first morning in class, I felt dozens of eyes on me, some curious, some indifferent. As I sat down, a group of girls whispered behind me. I heard she transferred from some rich school. Look at the way she dresses, nothing special. I lowered my head, pretending not to hear. It was the same everywhere. Whether in my mother's house or in a new school, I was still an outsider. But I wouldn't let that define me anymore. I knew I had to change. I couldn't keep standing on the sidelines of my own life. That night, I opened my laptop and started searching for scholarships. I knew my father was working hard to support me, but I didn't want to add to his burden. If I could secure my own future, I would. I found a full-ride scholarship for outstanding students. A way to escape my current limitations, to gain independence, to never have to depend on anyone again. But the requirements were tough, only the top students would qualify. I had never been the best at anything. At my mother's house, no matter how hard I tried, I was always just Lily's shadow. But here, no one was comparing me to anyone. I had a chance to prove myself. I threw myself into my studies. I had once felt lost, unsure of where I belonged, but now, I had a clear goal. I stayed after school to do extra assignments, borrowed additional books from the library, took meticulous notes in every class. My teachers started to notice me. One day, Mr. Parker, my math teacher, called me aside after class. Sophia, your grades have improved significantly. Are you aiming for a scholarship? I nodded. Yes. I want to win it. He smiled. If you need help, come see me. I think you have a great shot. His words fueled me. I didn't just want the scholarship. I would get it. As I spent more time in the library, I started meeting others who shared the same goal. Maria, a quiet but incredibly intelligent girl, always sat in the corner of the library with a towering stack of books. One day, as I struggled to find an advanced math book, she handed me exactly the one I needed. This one has great exercises. Are you studying for something? I looked at her, slightly surprised that she had initiated a conversation. Yeah, I'm aiming for a scholarship. Maria nodded, her eyes lighting up. Me too. Maybe we can help each other? That was the first time in a long while that I felt like someone actually wanted to be by my side. The semester passed in a blur of late-night study sessions, endless piles of assignments, and countless sleepless nights. But when I held my final report card in my hands, nearly perfect scores staring back at me, I knew I was on the right path. The day the scholarship results arrived, I trembled as I opened the envelope. My father stood beside me, just as nervous as I was. When I saw the words, "Congratulations, you have been awarded a full scholarship," my heart pounded so hard I could hardly believe my eyes. I had done it. Dad pulled me into a tight hug, his voice breaking with emotion. "Sophia, I am prouder of you than anything in this world." I smiled through my tears. For the first time in my life, I felt like I truly belonged somewhere. Not in my mother's house. Not in a past filled with pain. But in a future I had built for myself. I was no longer the abandoned child in my own home. 10 years had passed since I left my mother's house, and I had built an entirely new life on my own. I graduated college with honors, landed my dream job at a prestigious financial firm, and lived in a small but warm apartment in the heart of the city. My life wasn't glamorous the way my mother had always wanted, but it was mine. And then, my mother called. I wasn't surprised. I had always known she would reach out one day. But not to reconcile, and certainly not to apologize. She was never that kind of person. "Sophia, it's been a long time. I hope you're doing well." Her voice on the phone was sweet in a way that felt rehearsed. I stayed silent, waiting for her to get to the point. She didn't disappoint. "Lily is moving to your city for college. We've covered her tuition, but renting an apartment is quite expensive. We think it would be best if she stayed with you. It would be convenient for both of you." I held my breath for a second before replying. "You mean Lily would be living in my home?" "It's not living in your home, Sophia. It's just sisters helping each other. You have a stable job now, and she's still a student. As her older sister, you should help her, don't you think?" I let out a dry laugh. "Have you ever cared about me this much?" A long silence followed before my mother responded coldly. "Sophia, don't be childish. You and Lily are sisters. Can't you be a little more open-hearted?" Emma. I knew that if I refused, she would paint me as the selfish villain in her story. But if I agreed, I knew exactly how this would end. I was too tired to argue. In the end I simply said, "Fine, but only for a short time." Lily moved in the following week. From the very first day I realized she hadn't changed at all. She arrived at my doorstep with 3 designer suitcases and a saccharine smile. "I already warned you. I'm a little picky about my living space, but I'm sure we'll have so much fun together." I wasn't sure what her definition of fun was, but I quickly found out. It meant partying every night, spending money recklessly, and treating me like her personal maid. She never helped around the house. She brought over friends who drank and laughed loudly even when I had important meetings the next morning. She left her clothes scattered across the living room and made ridiculous demands like, "Sophia, do we have celery juice? I can't start my morning without it." I held my tongue. I had endured enough in the past to know that arguing with Lily was pointless. But then Ethan entered the picture. Ethan was the first person who ever made me feel like I mattered. He didn't see me as someone's shadow. He didn't judge me based on what I did or didn't have. He loved me for who I was. And Lily noticed. I started seeing the way she acted whenever Ethan came over. The way her eyes scanned him slowly. The way her voice softened. The way her smile lingered just a little too long. One night, as I stepped out of the kitchen, I overheard her saying to him, "Are you sure you actually like Sophia? She's always so serious. Don't you find that boring?" I froze. Ethan immediately stepped back, his expression filled with irritation. "I love Sophia, and I don't like the way you're talking about her." When I entered the room, Lily looked at me and shrugged as if it were nothing. "Relax, sis, I was just joking." I had had enough. "Lily, you need to find somewhere else to live." She blinked in disbelief. "Are you kicking me out?" "Yes, you've crossed the line. This is not a hotel and I am not responsible for you." Her expression darkened. But instead of apologizing, she let out a bitter laugh. "Honestly, I'm not even surprised. You've always been jealous of me. You never wanted me to have a better life than you, did you?" I laughed. "Lily, I was never jealous of you. I just refused to be used anymore." Less than an hour later my phone buzzed. I didn't need to check the screen to know who it was. "You are such a spiteful person, Sophia. You've always hated Lily, you never appreciated your family." I listened as my mother unleashed her fury, every word sharp as a knife. But this time, I felt nothing. I had once feared being abandoned, but now I realized I had never truly had them to begin with. When she finally stopped to catch her breath, I simply said, "If you only called to blame me, then we have nothing left to talk about." "You'll regret this, Sophia." I smirked. "No, Mom, I won't." Then I hung up, and for the first time in my life, I felt completely free. 2 years had passed since I last spoke to my mother. Ever since I kicked Lily out, my life had been peaceful. No more wild parties, no more intrusions into my space, and most importantly, no more feeling like I was being taken advantage of. I had spent that time focusing on my career, growing as a person, and cherishing the love I had with Ethan. He had always been by my side, never letting me feel alone the way my family once did. We were happy, and for the first time I felt like I truly had the life I had always dreamed of. Until I heard about Lily's wedding. I didn't find out about my sister's wedding from my family. No one called me, no invitation arrived. I found out through a coworker who happened to see Lily's picture on an online news site. "Sophia, your sister is having a huge wedding, did you know?" I looked at her phone screen, and in that moment, I realized I had never truly been part of that family. The photos on the article screamed extravagance. A rented castle, a custom-designed wedding gown, a guest list full of the wealthy and famous. Lily wasn't just getting married. She was hosting a grand spectacle to showcase the life my mother had always wanted for her. I hesitated for a moment before deciding to call my mother. Maybe, just maybe, some small part of me still wanted to believe she wouldn't completely shut me out of this. When she picked up, her voice was cold, as if we had never been mother and daughter. "What do you want?" I took a deep breath. "I heard about Lily's wedding. Congratulations to her." She was silent for a few seconds before responding indifferently. "Yes, she's getting married. Everything is perfect." I hesitated. "So, are you planning to send me an invitation?" A scoff. Then, a sharp laugh. "Sophia, do you really think this wedding is for someone like you?" I froze. "What do you mean?" "This is a high-class event, Sophia. The guests are people of status, people who can help Lily's future. Do you really think you belong there?" My chest tightened. My mother had never said it so directly before. She had always been distant, but this was the first time she officially denied me as her daughter. I forced my voice to stay steady. "So you're saying I'm not welcome?" "Exactly." Her tone didn't waver. "Don't bother Lily with your jealousy. You've never supported your sister, so don't pretend now." I bit my lip, gripping the phone tightly. In the end, I said only one thing before hanging up. "Thank you for making things crystal clear." I once thought my mother's rejection would break me. But instead, all I felt was relief. I didn't need them anymore. Ethan watched me as I set my phone down, his eyes full of concern. "Are you okay?" I turned to him, and for the first time, I said out loud what I had carried inside me for years. "I never really had a family. But I don't need one anymore." He took my hand. "Then we'll build our own family." A few months later, Ethan proposed. No fancy restaurant, no extravagant gifts, no grand spectacle. Just the two of us, on a quiet beach, making a promise to spend our lives together. And I said yes. My wedding was nothing like Lily's. No castles, no endless guest lists. Just the people who truly loved me. My father was the first to walk into the bridal suite, his face beaming as he took in the sight of me in my simple, yet meaningful wedding dress. "Sophia, you look beautiful." I hugged him tightly. "Thank you. For always being here." He patted my back gently. "I'll always be here, sweetheart." And as I walked down the aisle, my father by my side and Ethan waiting for me at the end, I knew I had finally found my real family. Not my mother, not Lily, but the people who chose to love me unconditionally. 3 years passed since I married Ethan. My life no longer had any ties to my mother or Lily. I had a stable job, a husband who loved me, and a home filled with peace. My father visited often, bringing laughter and wisdom that I cherished. I thought my past was truly behind me. But then, one afternoon my phone rang. And the name on the screen made me freeze. Well, I stared at it for a few seconds before answering. Not because I expected anything good, but because I wanted to know what she wanted this time. "Sophia." Her voice lacked the pride it had the last time I'd heard it. "What do you want, Mom?" I asked, keeping my voice calm. She sighed, and then, almost in a whisper, she said, "I need your help." I closed my eyes. I had seen this coming. I didn't need to ask what had happened. She and Richard had poured all their money into Lily's extravagant wedding. Renting an expensive venue, inviting celebrities, throwing a grand event, as if they were high society. They had spent everything to turn Lily into a princess for a day. But there was no fairy tale ending. Lily's marriage had fallen apart in just over a year. I had heard from others that she had cheated, and when she was caught, her wealthy husband not only divorced her, but demanded a hefty financial settlement. Of course they had no money. Richard's business had crumbled. My mother had never been independent. She had always lived off others. Their dream of wealth had completely collapsed. And now she was begging me. "You know we have no one else to turn to, Sophia. We're out of money. The house was repossessed. Lily has nowhere to go." Her voice trembled, but I felt no pity. "So what do you want from me?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "We'll move in with you. You have enough space, you have a stable job, you can help your family." I let out a short, bitter laugh. "Family? You think this is family?" My mother was silent for a few seconds before she spoke. "Sophia, you can't just abandon your mother and your sister like this. We are family." A familiar anger bubbled inside me. Family? Where was she when I needed her? When I was thrown out of the house, did she think about me as her daughter? When I was banned from Lily's wedding because I wasn't high class enough? Did she think about family then? I took a deep breath, keeping my voice cold. "No, Mom. You and Lily are not my family." On the other end of the line, she inhaled sharply. "You're going to regret this, Sophia." I let out a dry laugh. "You've said that before." I thought she would hang up after that. But she wasn't finished. If you refuse to help, I'll sue you." I blinked, then let out a real laugh this time. "Sue me? For what?" "Because you're my daughter. You have an obligation to help your family. I can take you to court for not supporting your mother in a time of need." I shook my head. "Mom, U.S. laws aren't like the TV dramas you watch. There's no law that forces me to support you. Especially when you never supported me." She fell silent. Maybe she had expected me to panic, to cave like I used to. But I wasn't that scared little girl anymore. For the first time in my life, I said what I had buried deep inside me for years. Mom, I escaped from you once, I won't let you pull me down again. She hissed through the phone. You ungrateful brat. You think you're better than us? You are nothing without me. I sighed. Without you, I became myself. And I have never been happier. Then I hung up before she could say another word. Ethan stepped closer, placing a gentle hand on my shoulder. Are you okay? I turned to him and smiled. Yeah. It's over. My father once told me that love isn't something you have to fight for, and I had learned that the hard way. I had no wealthy stepfather, no mother who saw me as a burden, no sister who saw me as a resource to exploit. But I had Ethan, I had my father, I had the family I chose. And that was all I needed. A year after my mother's final phone call, I received news far greater than anything she had ever thrown at me. I was pregnant. When the doctor confirmed it, I gripped Ethan's hand, tears rolling down my cheeks. Not from fear, not from anxiety, but because, for the first time in my life, I felt like I truly had a family. A family I had chosen. 9 months later, on a quiet autumn morning, my firstborn son entered the world. Ethan held my hand, whispering words of encouragement as I squeezed his fingers through the pain. And when our baby's first cry echoed through the room, I knew my life had officially begun a new chapter. Holding my son in my arms, I gazed down at his tiny face, his bright eyes looking up at me as if he had known me forever. I thought back to all the lonely nights, all the times I had wished for someone to love me unconditionally. I didn't have to wish anymore. I pressed a soft kiss to my son's forehead and whispered, "You will never feel unwanted, I promise." Ethan wrapped his arms around us both, his eyes shining with unshed tears. We did it, Sophia. You did it. The first visitor I had after being discharged from the hospital was my father. He walked into the living room with a giant teddy bear in one arm and a small gift box in the other. When he saw his grandson, his face lit up with pure joy. Oh my, little guy, you look just like your mama when she was a baby. I laughed, but when my father sat beside me and met my eyes, my smile softened. I'm so proud of you, Sophia. I really am. I swallowed the lump in my throat and took his hand. Thank you, Dad, for always being here. I know I don't say it enough, but if it weren't for you, I wouldn't be who I am today. He smiled and squeezed my hand firmly. You've always been strong, Sophia. And now, you have your own family. But you will always be my daughter. Those words, simple but sincere, wrapped around me like a warm blanket. My mother was gone from my life, so was Lily. But I still had a father who never left me, who never saw me as a burden. And that was more than enough. A few months after my son was born, I heard that my mother and Lily had moved to another state. My mother had taken a part-time job, and Lily was still relying on social connections to survive. I wasn't surprised. But I also didn't care anymore. I had spent too many years of my life longing for love from people who never intended to give it to me. Now I didn't need it. I had Ethan. I had my son. I had my father. I had the life I once thought I could never have. One afternoon, as I sat on the porch watching my son giggle in Ethan's arms, I realized something. I had won. Not by seeking revenge, not by proving anything to my mother or Lily, but by finding my own happiness. I smiled softly, took a deep breath, and let the warm sunlight brush against my skin. No more fear. No more pain. Only freedom. Only joy. Only me. Sophia. And the new life I had built for myself. Sophia's story is not just about escaping a toxic family, but a testament to the power of independence and perseverance. She learned to let go of those who never valued her, to focus on the future, and to build a life of happiness on her own terms. In reality, many people experience painful family relationships, but the important thing is that they have a choice: to continue enduring, or to step away and seek true happiness. Family isn't always about blood. It's about the people who love us unconditionally. Sophia's journey has come to an end, but the lessons of family, self-reliance and self-worth remain. What do you think about her journey? Have you ever experienced something similar? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to follow the channel for more meaningful life stories.